improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Carry On Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Colbert, the Iceman, and this is the SITREP for the week of May the 5th. I struggled with this report because it's been such a slow news day. I couldn't come up with anything to talk about. No, it has been insane. There is so much to talk about. I have had to edit tremendously the amount of content that I wanted to express because we just don't have the 9 hours it's going to take to unpack the clusterfuck that has become the United States foreign policy. But I'll do my level best. Before I do that, though, I do want to say some thank yous. To Vincent, Joseph, John, Elijah, and Brett, our latest Patreon subscribers, I sincerely appreciate your listenership, your support, and your viewers. If you are interested in joining the program, please do, whether it's Patreon or not, Patreon or not. This is the kind of thing that keeps shows like mine running and keeps us in front of your ears. And with that, let's begin as we always do. We're going to do a once around the world, check in with our different operational commands. Beverage of choice for tonight is not very exciting. It's basically the house bourbon. Yep. So I buy it in bulk. I pour it in a glass that is no different than any other glass I would use. And so for my eyes, it says, oh, you're drinking something nice tonight. My tongue says, no, you're not. But I will say it is served in an America 250th anniversary glass, celebrating what's coming in July, which is the 250th anniversary of the greatest nation in the world. So let's take a look at what the greatest nation in the world has been up to for the last week. CENTCOM. Yeah, it's a no-brainer in the CENTCOM AO. Operation Epic Fury is the center of gravity for just about the entire planet, the United States, most assuredly. U.S. leadership frames this as decisive, finite, and not endless. I have done my level best when I discuss these kind of things with you to eliminate bias and just deliver the facts, something that is sorely lacking in media these days. However, I have to, at this juncture, call bullshit. One of the things, and I don't mind the strikes against Iran. I'm going to put that right up front. One of the things that I do mind, however, is there is no stated end state. What does victory look like? Where do we draw the success line? And I am not talking about an aircraft carrier with victory on the side of it. I'm talking about concrete metrics, but we'll get into that in a minute. According to Pete Hegseth and the administration at large, this is not supposed to be an endless war. It has objectives focused on degrading Iran's missile, naval, and broader security infrastructure, and which I think are absolutely finite metrics. The problem that I have with the Iran campaign, and forgive me for digressing yet again, the war has momentum, inertia, if you will, and it's almost at this point impossible to stop it. We are in the midst of an escalatory retaliation ladder where I just don't see the end terminus anytime soon. So whether the administration touts 5 or 6 weeks of operations is yet to be seen. However, there's a lot of fog of war that's taking place. Many of you have seen the news, so I don't want to belabor the point, but 3 F-15 Strike Eagles were shot down by the Kuwaitis, launched from U.S. airbase in Kuwait. Embarrassing for all parties, and I'm sure the Kuwaitis are rich enough to repay us for the damaged aircraft. You're not going to buy a new F-15. They don't make them anymore, but you can probably give us an equal or greater value replacement. Thanks, Kuwait. Also, I'm very relieved to hear that the pilots of the F-15 Strike Eagles landed safely, and local Kuwaiti citizens were kind enough to bundle them up in ground transportation and repatriate them, if you will, back to U.S. base. So that was fantastic. In addition to everything that's going on in Central Command's AO, we also have parallel counterterrorism strikes that are continuing in Syria against ISIS targets. If you're keeping score, we've had about 30 plus targets to date reported just for early February. What that signals is that it reminds our adversaries and potential adversaries, and wow, that list is growing, that the U.S. is still running counterterrorism lines while fighting a state-level opponent. The tempo plus complexity, though, will lead to accidents if we're not careful. When you're conducting high-volume strike operations, air defense suppression, ISR, and coalition deconfliction, you get errors. And when those happen, they're going to be politicized by the left or the right. It is very interesting to see how those on Capitol Hill have fleshed out in their allegiance towards this campaign. We'll call it a campaign. There's tons of armchair quarterbacks, political pundits, self-described legal experts that are falling into two camps on this issue. Either the administration has the legal authority to do this or they don't. Personally, I don't give a shit. That is not what we're going to talk about. So let's keep moving on towards Iran. Maritime disruptions have been across the board. We're going to talk about those in a little greater detail in one of the next segments. You have proxy fires, information operations, both for and against the war in Iran, both for and against the United States and Israel, and to a greater extent, its allies and proxies. All of these are designed to fracture coalition cohesion and public patience, which ultimately is where this is going to be adjudicated. Sad to say, but the United States is close to a midterm election cycle, and things like this have the potential to be grassroots movements against the incumbent. Straits of Hormuz. Many of you have seen the news reports that the Straits of Hormuz are closed, and I just want to mention that the Straits of Hormuz are not closed. There's no physical boundary to ships transiting through the straits. The problem is insurance. The underwriters that cover the insurance cost of these ships have essentially, and I am going to simplify this, knowing full well that I am leaving out some salient details. Essentially, the insurance companies have raised the rates so much that it is now prohibitively expensive to transit through the straits in this war area. No one's doing it. If you look at some of the open source websites that track the AIS, the automated indicator systems on these ships, the beacons, if you will, you'll see that there's about 100 plus ships stacked up south of the strait waiting to transit. That has a massive ripple effect in the global economy. But I don't want you to become confused and think that the strait is mined, that there's Iranian gunboats or anything to that effect, because that's just not the case. All right, let's leave CENTCOM alone. We'll come back to it. Don't worry, and move over to the INDOPACOM. The Philippines, the U.S., and the Japanese have all been conducting naval drills pushed north towards the Philippines' northernmost areas, explicitly linked to contesting maritime pressure and operating closer to Taiwan's approach. This is messaging. This is exactly what the United States needs to be doing right now. As I've mentioned in previous broadcasts, the United States does a lot of, let's call it interoperability. I've been a part of tons of it, training various partner forces in a host of skills and disciplines. Not only do we get to bring their level of training up a little bit, we learn some things ourselves, but at the end of the day, it's great for interoperability when the day comes, hopefully it doesn't, that we need to both join forces in a war against an unknown adversary, China. So things like what's taking place in INDOPACOM are business as usual, strong message signaling against China towards Taiwan. Currently underway is a multilateral maritime cooperative activity. That's the South China Sea, underscoring allied patterning, its presence, if nothing else. You also have Freedom Shield. This happens every year. It's between ROK and the U.S., and it's going to run from March 9th to March 19th. It is maintaining a combined readiness while North Korea predictably frames it as rehearsals. I love this time of year because if you tune in to the North Korean propaganda network, also known as their state-run media, you get that one lady who screams in a shrill and just horrible voice like she's had amphetamines IV'd into her bloodstream for the past 9 days before the broadcast. It's freaking brilliant. Go on YouTube and check it out. We also have Cobra Gold taking place, 2026 Cobra Gold. I've participated in 3 of these. They usually take place, at least for when I was in Thailand, but they involve the Indo-Pacific as a whole, multilateral readiness, NEO rehearsals, which is an evacuation rehearsal. It's a great opportunity to, again, like our Philippines and Japanese partners, strengthen ties, reinforce interoperability, and it's a lot of fun. You get to drink Cobra whiskey. It's Thai whiskey with a dead cobra head stuffed inside the bottle. Fantastic. China's line on all of this, as it has consistently been, is this is a disruption. This is provocative. It responds with their own version of patrols, coercion. The risk is, as always, just an incident at sea, with the U.S. attention currently split by Iran. We're spread kind of thin, and we don't have the bandwidth to incur anything right now with China. So they know it, we know it, and they're pressing that advantage, and they're exploiting that gap. Korea always responds. That's not going to be a problem. And let's just see if the United States can sustain this deterrence posture while without hollowing out readiness. I don't think we can. A lot of people are complaining about the extended duration of the Air Force carrier groups, the naval carrier groups that are out there. I've talked about it in previous broadcasts. We're not stretched too thin, but we're getting there. Let's move over to Northern Command. NORTHCOM is participating right now in Arctic Edge 2026. This is going to go from February 23rd to the March 13th. This is taking place across Alaska, Greenland. It's more multi-domain command and control, Arctic homeland defense interoperability. It's a lot of buzzwords. What it essentially means is Greenland is important, okay? And it's going to continue to be important, especially as Russia continues to exert control. China tries to exert control. The straits adjacent to Greenland, the waterways, they're going to become even more important. The Arctic, it's no longer cold weather training. It's about deterring cruise missiles, building infrastructure, building defense. My hope is that this whole Greenland obsession that the Trump administration has goes away. I don't have the patience for it. I think the whole thing is silly. Reinforcing Greenland's self-defense is extraordinarily important. It signals to Russia and China that the U.S. is rehearsing the home game as well. Let's move over to AFRICOM for a moment. Still doing strikes in Somalia, coordinated with the Somali government. That's ongoing. We also have AFRICOM's largest annual multinational exercise in East Africa. It's running from February 23rd to March 13th, and that's across multiple countries focused on interoperability. Man, that's just a buzzword, isn't it? But it's, domain readiness, it's joint partners, it's ISR, it's a lot of different stuff. And it's basically something that the United States does in perpetuity. If we don't, somebody else will, and we don't want these countries cozying up to Russia or China. And that's really the only 2 people that are near-peer adversaries to the United States that have the potential to do something like this. So, although people may disagree, it is important for the United States foreign policy to keep those 2 countries in their own hemisphere. All right. Speaking of our own hemisphere, let's go to SOUTHCOM. SOUTHCOM has publicly confirmed, and we're going to talk about this in a separate segment here in a moment, U.S. and Ecuador operations against designated narco-terrorist organizations. Now, that's a March 3rd SOUTHCOM press release. So they've pretty much admitted that they are now working in Ecuador. Heretofore, they kind of denied it, obfuscated it, but it's out there in the open. This is a big hemisphere reminder that CENTCOM is busy with Iran, but the U.S. is still willing to apply direct action in its own backyard. What to look for in the next 7 days on the global front? I would definitely look at the Strait of Hormuz. I understand the administration has publicly said they were going to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz using naval vessels. That is a lie. There's no freaking way that is going to happen. Not that they're not capable. We don't have the ships. 2 carrier groups, Arleigh Burke destroyers, and littoral combat ships. I got it. you have 125 to 150 ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz every day. How are you possibly going to provide an escort to each and every vessel? Well, the simple answer is you're not. Unless you surged almost every floating U.S. flagged wartime and Coast Guard ship that we have, you're not going to do it. Now, I didn't necessarily mind the Trump administration's claim that we would fund the cost of insurance. That we can do. CENTCOM strikes are probably going to shift from infrastructure degradation, because frankly, there's not a whole lot left, to targeting leadership, Iranian Republican Guard Corps, possibly ground operations. God, I hope not. I will talk about this in a moment, but I seriously hope not. There is no way that that is going to end well. INDOPACOM, look for continued Chinese counter-patrols near the Philippine operations area, especially their economic exclusion zones. Korea is going to continue to escalate, probably launch a couple of missiles to show that they're still in the fight while we conduct this Freedom Shield window, right? And the Arctic, you've got the Arctic operations, basing, logistics. Understand when we talk about the once around the world, especially when it comes to damage, casualties, and target counts, these are incomplete because a lot of this information is compartmentalized, it's classified, it's just not open source. Some outlets that are claiming statistics and facts, they're hard to independently confirm in real time. So where possible, I always rely on official command release and the major wires. Let's move and go to Iran. When it comes to the Iran campaign, honestly, most of the coverage is already out there. I wanted to try and approach the problem that has taken place with Iran with a somewhat different lens. I thought it could be fun to just kind of run down the target list and list what the United States has attacked successfully, what Israel has attacked successfully. All of these are confirmed with multiple source reporting, or at least reported single source with a highly credible organization like Reuters, AP, or some of the foreign wire services. So this is the best available public strike list. I want to just one more time remind everybody that the full target list is classified, and that's not what we talk about on shows like this. So let's run down the list, starting with leadership and national command located in Tehran. Things like their leadership complex has been hit. This is where decisions are made about what Iran is going to do politically, diplomatically, militarily. They hit the Supreme National Security Council, the building, it's gone. The presidential office, yeah, we know about that. Assembly of Experts, that's the organization who basically elects a new supreme ruler, right? Yep. The intelligence, security, and military command centers in Tehran. This is reported by Reuters. Specific buildings are not fully enumerated, and I understand. Much of this is derived from open source satellite imagery, which, if you're a fan, you can track down yourself and look at the before and after, kind of the way Google Earth has photographs of my house. You can do the same thing. Looking at the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, internal security nodes, we've got the IRGC headquarters was struck. That was announced by CBS and reported by U.S. press briefings. Police and internal security buildings, those have been reported as struck in Tehran. Commercial satellite imagery indicates multiple government and security buildings have been damaged. The strikes that I am listing have all been executed by cruise missiles and precision targeted munitions from fixed-wing aircraft, bombers. So B-1s, B-2s, and B-52s in some cases, all departing from the United States and returning to the United States. So these are long sorties. Everything else has been launched from surface vessels, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These cruise missiles are expensive, by the way. I don't know what the final price tag is on this whole puppy. I'm sure that somebody in the government accounting office can tally this for us, but this is a very, very expensive attack. And these cruise missiles have a long procurement leg attached to them. You don't just run down to Walmart and get a new cruise missile. They are expensive, and they can take up to a year to reach final production. So I hope it's money well spent. Let's move on. Attacking the ballistic missile force. These are the launchers, the bases, the underground sites. There is a base near Tabriz and Kermanshah. Yeah. We all know I don't speak foreign. I've told you this before, especially by the time of night that I am projecting this broadcast. Satellite imagery shows a lot of destroyed structures, craters, and a tunnel and bunker entrance targeting. We've talked in previous broadcasts about the underground missile cities that Iran has. That's what these are designed to do. It degrades their ability to retaliate, to strike, and it prevents them from rallying a response, although they've done a pretty good job of rallying a response with their drones, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. The underground missile facility at Haji Abad reported struck in February 28th, satellite imagery referenced by CTP and ISW. A missile base north of Kermanshah, also reported destroyed. That was above ground in that one. Imam Sajjad Missile Base, which is southwest of Tehran, reports strike by the Israeli Defense Force. Now, missile production has also been targeted, and it's a no-brainer. In addition to the stockpiles of missiles that Iran currently has, you want to destroy their ability to produce more. So, IRGC-affiliated missile components manufacturing sites in western Tehran, those made surface-to-surface and surface-to-air components, gone. It's gone. What else? Nope. There was a chemical plant that produced missile components and the solid fuel inputs. That's gone. There was a IRGC-affiliated facility in Parand linked to ammonium percolate. Yes. That's gone. Solid fuel missiles. Essentially, anything that has the ability to produce components or fuel those missiles, it's gone. There was a radar dome near the Imam Khomeini International Airport. That was hit. A radar in Kish Island was hit. Air bases were hit, like the 2nd Artish Air Force Tactical Air Base in Tabriz. They cratered the runway. Imagery suggests operational denial. If you're not following along, we have complete air superiority of Iranian fixed-wing aircraft, but they are still throwing a tremendous amount of one-way attack drones our way. The 7th Artish Air Force Tactical Air Base cratered, runways gone. Karaj reported strikes on the IRGC-affiliated helicopter manufacturing facility, and then IDF gave evacuation warnings around the Piyam airport area. And I will say this, the one thing that you have to give the IDF credit for, and the United States to a lesser extent, is we're very polite when we bomb the shit out of you. We will let you know ahead of time, we're going to fuck you up, and you may want to leave. And there's enough time for you to do that, and only that. And the Israelis do it, and the United States does it. And we did it in Iraq in 2003, and we've done it almost consistently, unless it's someplace that, frankly, is a 100% bad area. No one's going to risk civilian casualties. There has also been a lot of nuclear infrastructure targeted in these raids with high confidence. The Natanz fuel enrichment plant, which is fully underground, we hit that last summer, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong on that one. Don't flame me if I got that wrong, but I thought we did. The entrance buildings are damaged, and that was confirmed by the IAEA via satellite imagery. No radiological consequences expected from that. So, nothing recirculated or put into the atmosphere that was radiological. No other impacts detected. You had a covert compound in the Tehran province. That was reported by IDF and CTP ISW as a location that was linked to weaponization of research components, all in support of a nuclear payload. Not independently verified by IAEA, but pretty strong assessment. Kind of rounding it off, you also have another underground strike facility reported by open source intelligence relayed by CTP and ISW. That's the Parchin military complex. Navy is completely gone. The IRIS Dena Iranian warship, that was sunk by a U.S. submarine torpedo off Sri Lanka. Fantastic story in and of itself. I don't want to dive into the details too much because it's been reported quite confidently by other sources. First strike by an American submarine since World War II. Other countries have used submarines since World War II, but this was the first time that the United States sunk a ship since then. They didn't list the exact sub, but I kind of assume it was a Los Angeles class attack sub based off the torpedo that was publicly announced as being used. There's certain boats that are not capable, but equipped with that type of torpedo, and the LA class just makes the most sense as a fast attack sub. Fantastic job. I'm sure that there were tons of high fives by the submariners on that boat. That's a big feather in your cap to do something like that. I've spent a little bit of time on a sub. They're a lot of fun, but they're also kind of boring in the sense that there's not a lot to see and there's not a lot to do. So good on them. Iranian Navy ships and subs that are counted amongst the U.S. targets hit are all in open source CBS briefings. So I don't want to go down the list, but they're pretty much neutered, as is their Air Force, as I just mentioned. What's not on this list, though, and why, the coalition, and coalition really consists of America and Israel. It's publicly described between the two of them, thousands of targets struck, but detailed coordinates, targets, they're never fully disclosed for operational security reasons and to protect the ISR platforms that we have, whether it be terrestrial or space-based. So what I'm giving you is open source, usually corroborated by multiple sources or highly credited single source. Some widely sourced claims that you've seen either in the news or in the social media feeds, take them with a grain of salt unless reported by satellite imagery, backed up by IAEA confirmation or high-grade reporting. So that's the target list so far as it stands on this Thursday. We'll keep tracking just really for the sake of keeping score. It almost makes it sound like it's a video game at this point. It's not. It's real. Yeah. If it is a video game, here's where the opponents are scoring points, and that's with the Shahed one-way attack drones. So the Shahed family of drones that the Iranians produce, quite well, may I add, export to Russia for use against the Ukrainians, is actually a design that was stolen by the Iranians based off of an Israeli design. And then we kind of stole the design from the Iranians and made our current batch of Lucas one-way attack drones, which is a fantastic product and probably worthy of a segment in and of itself. But the Iranians' Shahed family of one-way drones are being used in tremendous success against targets in the Middle Eastern theater, and as much as they can be used in the Ukraine conflict, though the Ukrainians are slowly eking out the tactical advantage when it comes to drone warfare. These are high volume, low cost, low and slow drones. They are designed to absolutely mudsuck an opponent into interceptor. If they can produce these for, let's say, I don't know, 10 to 20,000 American dollars, and we spend $500,000 on an interceptor missile to shoot it down, they've already won. We can't produce our interceptors fast enough. After the last 4+ years of war in Ukraine, where we have provided them with a tremendous amount of these interceptor capabilities, we're kind of running low. It's not a critical shortfall, but it is getting close to it. This force persistent defensive counter air patrols that are required to maintain vigilance against these is another huge drain on U.S. resources. And it creates leakage when a defender can't maintain perfect coverage. These drones are squeaking through. They fly very low. very slow. They're hard to track when launched against a surface vessel at sea. A lot of times they're obfuscated by the surface search radar that ships use to detect a threat. When the Navy designed its ships, and I'm not telling you anything you probably don't already know, they were designed to counter a threat from an adversary that was symmetrical, not asymmetric. So you're talking about an anti-ship missile, which has a specific flight pattern. You have torpedoes, you have fixed-wing aircraft, or you have another naval vessel firing fixed cannons at you. I mean, World War II battleship style, if you will. All of these things are built into naval architecture and kind of easily defended against in 2026. What is not easily defended against is something that skims the top of the ocean or is so small as to be very difficult to track on radar and may fly erratically. That makes it hard to shoot down. And the interceptor methods, they do work, but they're resource intensive, they're expensive, and as I mentioned, they are finite, especially for these exquisite interceptors that you need for ballistic missiles, not the Shahed drones, which is nothing more than a moped on wheels. There was a classified Capitol Hill briefing that took place, at least reported anyways, on March 4th, where senior U.S. officials reportedly told lawmakers the U.S. cannot guarantee it can shoot down every drone in a full barrage. When I first watched the Iranian campaign unfold, I was perhaps naively convinced that we could absorb anything that Iran would throw our way. And for a while, that held true. But the Shahed drone's capabilities and quantity has far eclipsed anything that we anticipated, and we've really underestimated it. So the operational answer is, okay, stop shooting them down. It's purely defensive, and let's destroy their launch sites, and let's do it fast. And that's sort of what's morphed in that theater. So why are these so hard to shoot down? Well, as I mentioned, the detection and the track that they fly. Low and slow, very small radar cross-section, and they're massed. We're talking about 20 to 40 launched at a time. It requires an adversary to track all of them. It cues a tremendous amount of sensors in the process, and it's not advanced tech. So it's really just a matter of scale and economics. They are made so inexpensive. We're talking between 10 to 50,000, depending on the type of Shahed that they're using. These are responsible for sucking a $500,000 to a $4 million response, depending on what is responding. That's an incredible economic outmatch. Even when you win tactically, and we normally do, you can lose strategically if you're spending scarce missiles at this scale, and the United States is. The cost-value interceptor problem has been analyzed by U.S. missile defense circles, and it is kind of causing some panic. The role that this conflict is causing inside your air defense architecture, when you talk about things like the Patriot missile system, the THAAD, all of these assets are supposed to preserve capacity for ballistic and cruise missiles. They were never designed to shoot down these Shahed low-cost one-way attack drones. And if you burn them on drones, you create risk elsewhere. And don't think for an instant that China is not watching this very carefully. Explicitly referring to the Patriot interceptors, they have to be used against ballistic missiles. And these strains that emerge, if they're used too extensively against Shaheds, is going to be felt across the industrial complex. We are looking at a 2-year time frame for Taiwan. That's my opinion, mind you, but that's what most of the intelligence and military services are looking at. That's not a lot of time. If you were 500 and 1,000 missiles in a deficit, not to mention what we've given to Ukraine, not to mention what we might spend in the coming weeks, yeah, that definitely gives China an advantage when it comes to Ukraine, and something I think we should be aware of. So what are we doing about it? There's a couple of different efforts. There's 3 basic ones that I'll talk about. One, Already mentioned, destroy the launch sites, destroy the infrastructure sites, prevent the ability for them to launch the drones and to make more drones. This is currently the shift that you're seeing in public sentiments and reporting. You preempt and you attrit the launch capability instead of trying to intercept everything. We're still going to shoot down the Shaheeds that are launched, but it makes perfect strategic sense to go after the launch sites. This is all open source reporting, by the way, and a lot of this points towards CENTCOM released footage and claims against the Shaheed launch prep, part of the broader efforts to suppress drone launch rates. Exact battle damage, BDAs, all of that, it's kind of noisy and really it's irrelevant. The implication here is that the U.S. excuse me, is treating these Shaheeds less like air threats to SWAT and more like a fire system to dismantle. Sensors, racks, stockpiles, operators, and the logistics chain. How many of these they have stockpiled and ready to go, we don't know for sure. I'm sure we're going to find out. The other line of effort is a layered defense. So you got to look at aircraft, jamming and spoofing, point defense guns, interceptor drones, and other low-cost solutions. Ukraine has learned the hard way about this paradigm. In fact, a lot of the subject matter experts in the world right now are the Ukrainian military members who are helping out Israel, United States, UK, the EU at large, and acting as consultants towards our campaign in the drone fight. The U.S. are using a workaround layered defense in the current operation, things like air-to-air interceptors, some electronic warfare, ground-based systems, but we are woefully unprepared when it comes to point defenses. And I've talked about it on this show before. We are woefully unprepared. We're way behind. There's a massive technology gap, but there's also just a flat out material gap. And that is for the acquisition folks to figure out. The engineering, the technology, it's there, but you have to be able to provide these at scale to where it matters, or that layer is not sustainable in the prolonged fight. What does this all mean? Expect a procurement and fielding surge in guns, jammers, decoys, autonomous interceptors, and then, of course, the training back that has to be put in place for all of these. Tooth to tail includes the training. Anything that turns the exchange ratio back into the defender's favor is going to be all-encompassing in that second line of effort. The third thing is kind of cool, directed energy weapons, where we're talking lasers, microwaves, and whatever next-gen technology that DARPA has been working on 5 years ago and could potentially be fielded in the next 12 to 24 months. Again, all I'm focused on mentally right now is 2027. Equipment and technology-wise. We talked when the El Paso airspace got shut down about the Helios. This has been used to neutralize drones at sea, along with other systems, but it's only been trialed. It's not fielded. As I said, the U.S. Navy, not really equipped for counter-drone warfare. So these are going to have to be fielded, and they're going to have to be fielded quick. So hurry the fucking tests up so we can get these things mounted on ships. Because you lose an aircraft carrier with 5,000 sailors aboard, and this is going to turn ugly really, really fast. A $50,000 drone sinking a multi-million dollar aircraft carrier is a huge, huge black eye for the United States. So this is a way to eliminate drone attacks and save expensive missiles, systems like these lasers. You also have the Army's IFPC, high energy laser, high powered microwave. The Government Accounting Office documents the Army's push towards indirect fire protection capability, directed energy variants, including HPM, designated to protect sites against small UAS individuals and in swarms. And it's the swarms that are really the most dangerous threat right now to some of these large, slowly maneuvered ships, highly vulnerable aircraft carriers. We'll see what happens. The implication on all of this is that the lasers, HPM, are being pursued because they're the cleanest answer to the Shaheed math. They have a deep magazine because it's a laser, it's an energy weapon. You don't have to come up with a new interceptor. Low cost per shot and a lot of resilience under saturation. Assuming, of course, that integration and reliability are solved, which I don't know if they can. Now, there is one more thing. It's not necessarily a line of effort, but it is something to consider, and that's reorganizing this counter-UAS ownership. So right now, the DoD is explicitly trying to reduce fragmentation in counter-UAS by centralizing leadership and emphasizing mobility, affordability, integration, and all of it into formations. They're trying to push the speed over the process. So what we're watching in real time is the United States get a masterclass in what our acquisition bureaucracy has resulted in. It is not fleet enough or fast enough to respond to a battlefield truth, which is counter-drone is not a boutique capability anymore. It is a baseline survivability function like camouflage or communications. And we are not prepared. We've come up with the Lucas. I've talked about it briefly. We're going to save it for a completely separate segment. But I will tell you that the United States basically made a U.S. version or a Shaheed-like drone with intercept capability. So yes, one way, but also has the ability to be a drone that counters other drones. I think that's pretty cool. It was tested in Operation Epic Fury, mirroring the logic of mass affordable strikes. And the Pentagon is looking at this Ukraine interceptor drone approach because they're cheaper and scalable, especially when you compare it to high burned rate items like missiles. Okay, a lot of words, all of it to say, we underestimated the Shaheed. We're losing the drone game. We recognize it. We're doing everything we can to fix it. We've got some incredibly talented people, both in the private sector, in the public sector, in uniform and out of uniform. If Iran can force the United States to spend our rare missiles faster than we can produce them, then Iran wins. They win the leverage even while losing drones. That's why the emphasis is shifting towards launch site suppression and these cheaper air defense layers. Our air superiority doesn't solve the drone attrition by itself. It's these Shaheed drones, they're not about contesting the skies. They're about contesting inventories, attention, and endurance, really. And that's why this Ukraine-styled layered defense is the blueprint. It's why we're asking them to weigh in on what we should do, and they're happy to do it. I think the future is in directed energy where feasible, personally. Low cost. We were supposed to mount these on the, I can't believe I blanked out on the name. The absolutely stealth ship the Navy built. All right. I'm blanking out. I have to recall that. There was a ship that the U.S. Navy fielded, and it was supposed to have a directed energy weapon. It was, too expensive and didn't get fielded. But my God, it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's not important. I think directed energy weapons is the way to go. So we'll see how this plays out. I definitely know that the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War has highlighted this as being a concern. So I hope that we can pivot. I hope we can pivot with a strategy and a technology that fixes it. All right. So let's move over to, let's see, do we want to talk about, let's talk about the CIA for a minute. The Kurds, the Peshmerga that has been in the northern part of Iraq, always pro-U.S., although we did screw them over pretty heavily towards the end there. They are chomping at the bit to get into the fight.
Right.
And knowing that, and this is not confirmed, this is a rumor. I'm not basing this off of solid reporting, but it is a story that is emerging. It caught my attention, and I do want to talk about it. The CIA is at least allegedly getting ready to, or in negotiations, or laying the groundwork down to arm the Iranian Kurdish factions cross-border. What is being reported is that the Iranian Kurdish dissident groups in Iraq, the KRG territory, are preparing for potential operations against Tehran, and say their operational tempo and intent is rising. There's always been Kurdish in the north that has been ostracized both by the Iraqis and the Iranians, occupying an area that is KRG territory. This is an opportunity to leverage a group that is very well adept at fighting, that is very pro-West, that is anti-regime. The problem that continually comes to mind with this Iranian air campaign is that's all it is. It's an air campaign. I don't see how we could possibly, with the target package that has been done to date and what is outlined for the future, topple the regime with cruise missiles. But that doesn't mean I want boots on the ground either. The Iranian people need to take responsibility for their own safety and rise up. If they want their country back, then you can take it. We will do everything we can to set the conditions for that. But at the end of the day, you got to do it yourself. And the Kurds are willing to do that. So I think that giving them the tools and the assets that they need to affect that change is, I think it's moral. I'll buy that. Regardless of what you think, that's my opinion. U.S. officials and the administration figures have contacted the Kurdish leadership. Again, this is allegedly. Iraqi Kurdish leaders, Iranian Kurdish opposition leaders, offering a mix of support. So it's usually framed as air support and logistics, if they're willing to align with U.S. objectives against Iran. The KRG in Baghdad are under heavy pressure from Tehran to prevent, though, this cross-border attack. Baghdad is pledging to stop launches from Iraqi soil. This is paired with Iranian missile and drone strikes on Kurdish opposition sites and other signaling. The U.S. is assessing arming the Iranian Kurdish groups, often attributed to CIA channels, to enable this pressure and I think possibly catalyze unrest inside Iran. Reuters characterizes this as discussions and contingencies. I don't know where they're getting their information from. Other outlets frame it more aggressively as CIA is funneling arms. I don't know if the CIA is or is not funneling arms. I think that you have two groups, one in Iraq, one in Iran, with similar goals, similar ideologies, that are willing to, by proxy, fight a war for you. And I mean, the U.S. has a long history of paying other people to do things that we either don't want to do or are simply not capable of doing. I would not champion American military forces on the ground in Iran. That is a bad idea. But if you have groups of individuals already native to that part of the world who are willing to take up arms to make their country different, then giving them beans, bullets, and Band-Aids is not the moral black hole that some people paint it to be. They have been moving towards the border, staging themselves in positioning for a potential attack. I don't know what that attack looks like. Some reports are claiming incursion, offensive. Others, including the Kurd and KRG voices themselves, are denying active operations. They say that they are treating fighters already moving into Iran as unconfirmed, contested, without independent verification. You've got a couple of different actors that are taking place. So just so you understand who these players are, the Iranian Kurdish armed political groups based in Iraqi Kurdistan. They are commonly referred to as the KDPI or PDKI variants. Kamala factions, PAK, PJAK, often cited in context. They've experienced a lot of combat, mostly against ISIS. They are very intense fighters. A lot of the U.S. forces that I've spoken to that spent any amount of time amongst them are like, they're just as good, if not better, than any other foreign fighter that they've worked with. Fiercely loyal, very competent, and I think that they would be a good horse to back. They're ready-made. They're ready-made irregular army, and they've been trained. They have existing camps. They have logistics near the frontier. So that's the Iranian Kurdish armed political groups, the KDPI and PDKI. You also have the KRG. They're kind of trapped. They want the U.S. protection and the leverage, but it also sits within Iran's retaliation envelope for missiles, drones, and militia pressure. So they're not really able to do a whole lot for themselves or us. So they're kind of in a pinch. Baghdad is another equation that you have to look at in this formula because they have incentive to clamp down to avoid being the battlefield, if you will, for Iran and U.S. proxy escalation. The Iraqis they're kind of tapped out. I don't know if you know this, but they've been pretty busy the last couple of decades, and they don't really have the reserves for this kind of thing anymore. But it's not about the Kurds as a moral clause. It's really about economy of force when you think about it. Western pressure against these forces in Tehran diverts IRGC manpower. And so even if an attack isn't done, the threat of one still draws in Iranian ISR and their internal security away from the external fronts. So it could be a feint. Either way, it works for the United States if it draws away some of the Iranian resources. It creates this persistent uncertainty inside Iran, border security, counterinsurgency load. I mean, all of it works in favor of the United States and its allies. I keep saying it's allies. It's like, it's us and Israel. Yes, other countries have lent support, material and other, but it truly is just the United States and Israel at this point. The strategic implications of them, the Kurds moving into Iran from Iraq, or the existing Iranian Kurds moving towards Tehran in some type of a formation, or asymmetrical warfare campaign, it does not take away that Tehran's going to retaliate, and they're going to treat any U.S.-enabled Kurdish cross-border as cause for retaliation against Kurdish camps, KRG infrastructure, not to mention U.S. assets in Iraq and Syria region. They're going to put a huge amount of pressure on Iraq's political and militia as well. Internal blowback is huge too, because separatist wars don't always equal a clean regime change. We have seen this model. In fact, it's currently playing out between the Taliban in Pakistan and the Taliban in Kandahar. If you enable these proxies and arm them and set them loose, you have no guarantee that they're going to hit the target you want them to hit. They're probably going to hit some other targets that you don't want them to hit. There's a lot of ethnic reprisals inside Iran. Even if the original intent is pressure, there's a lot of analysts warn that this path can destabilize Iran instead of liberate it. Then there's a Turkey factor. And Erdogan has never been a stalwart ally of the United States. We keep Turkey in NATO. We keep bases in Turkey because of their proximity to Russia. We need Turkey. But man, they fucking play both sides. Even if the U.S. channels is not rumor and we're actually supporting Iranian Kurdish factions distinct from the PKK, Ankara often sees Kurdish armed empowerment as, well, strategically contagious, let's say. Any perception of overlap is going to strain an already strained U.S. and Turkey ties. It's going to create a lot of operational friction. Not to mention the Kurds themselves. I said earlier that we kind of buddy fucked them, and we did. Probably a segment for another time, but the Kurdish leaders remember U.S. support is tactical and it's temporary. And this makes them very cautious to enter into a relationship with the United States again, even against an enemy of theirs. It makes the arming story politically useful, even if the material flow is limited, because it signals intent and it shapes risk-taking. What I would look for next when it comes to this is, does U.S. public statements shift from support to explicit authorization language about equipping Iranian opposition or local partners? Anything like that in news, and I would read between the lines as, oh, we are arming the Kurds and we are giving them air and intelligence to potentially move against the regime, or at least draw the IRGC away. Any KRG posture change, so camp restrictions, Iraqi federal security movements near the KRG, border corridors, all of that is another indicator. Iranian strike patterns, are they sustaining a continued targeting towards Kurdish camps? Iraqi nodes, that all suggests that Tehran believes that material support is flowing, and that's probably true. Any coalition formation amongst Iranian and Kurdish factions, so political straight to operational coordination. If any of these are accurate, this whole thing is a classic irregular warfare play. It's what, I mean, God, I hate to say it this way, but it's stock and trade of the CIA. I don't see an issue with it. They are identifying a strategic lever and they're maneuvering to push that lever. So yeah, there's going to get blowback. There's going to be regional retaliation, and there's a long insurgency tail, or you get nothing at all because no one's going to partner with you. All right. All of this is, of course, anonymous sourcing, secondhand reporting. Intelligence is inherently opaque on this one. I just thought it was an interesting story. There's a lot of fog of war and psychological operations. This whole thing could be smoke and mirrors designed to get Tehran to believe it, and it siphons off a lot of material. So I'll report back on this when I have something more to report on. I kind of want to leave it with a story that I had mentioned in the Once Around the World about Ecuador, because I think that has the potential, especially considering the fact that it's kind of in our backyard, that has the potential to be very dynamic, very kinetic, and almost, I don't want to say another Venezuela, but Venezuela-esque mixed with a dash of Mexico. U.S. Southern Command publicly announced for the first time that on March 3rd, Ecuadorian and U.S. military forces have launched operations in Ecuador against designated terrorist organizations framed as counter-narcoterrorism. A lot of this is coming from ABC News, citing a source familiar to the U.S. administration that our role is limited to advising. We had that same language in the buildup towards Southeast Asia campaign, so I take that one with a grain of salt when they say we have advisors in Ecuador responsible for planning, intelligence, operational support. They're claiming that U.S. personnel is not participating in actual ground operations or aerial lift. Okay. Associated Press, they confirm the announcement, notes that a video that was released provides minimal operational clarity on what's actually taking place, but it adds Nobia ordered his foreign ministry in February to pursue agreements enabling a temporary, their words, not ours, incorporation of special forces from allied nations. So you probably have a special forces team down there operating in a advisory capacity, which is very gray in scope. Ecuador's defense ministry, it's reportedly acknowledged joint operations that exist, but the details are classified according to their local news service, El Paz. The bottom line on this one is that there is, in fact, a overt U.S.-Ecuador operational link, publicly acknowledged, where the United States is at a minimum providing advisors and intelligence support to Ecuadorian military units targeting gangs now treated as terrorist actors. And if you want to look at the timeline, if we sort of zoom out here, this is not new. It actually goes back to 2009. The prior U.S. footprint at Manta ended when the lease expired and Ecuador chose not to renew. 2008, they had this Constitution, Article 5, where Ecuador bars foreign military bases and facilities for military purposes. Now, you fast forward to 2024, Reuters reports that Nobia pushes to amend Article 5, which does allow foreign basing, arguing it's needed for transnational crime. I think they got in way over their heads. I think they needed United States material and intelligence support. So they changed their constitution to allow us to come back. And in September of 24, Reuters reports that that was the case. They amended it. And so fast forward to, November 16th of last year, the voters rejected the proposal allowing foreign military bases. February 26th of this year, Nobia orders a pursuit of agreements to allow temporary incorporation of allied special forces. So the government of Ecuador has officially prohibited the United States from basing in that country. And they're really riding the seam of this gray legal sort of loophole that allows advisors to be present, but not actively participate in any of the military operations that are taking place. So they claim. What is the U.S. probably doing down there? If I was to guess, definitely forward advisory presence. So helping with planning cells, liaison, mission design, because we're really good at that stuff. Intelligence support, we're really good at that stuff. So fusion, targeting, intelligence preparation of the battlefield, ISR taskings, things like that. And then probably some operational enablements like comms, possibly logistics, but the news reports are framing it as only operational support. The things that are not confirmed in the open record are direct kinetic U.S. action inside Ecuador. Both sides, us and them, are saying, nope, we've got nothing to do with it. Maybe. I don't know. Could be true, could not true. The number of units, the exact type, where they're based from, what their ROEs are, all of that stuff, also not in the open record, unable to be confirmed. Strategically, it's interesting. Yes, the United States is supporting Ecuador in eliminating narco-terrorism. The current administration has a boner for narco-terrorism. We've seen it in Venezuela. It is used as the casus belli for a lot of other kinetic actions. So this shift from crime to war framing is a model that we've seen before. You call these cartels and gangs terrorist organizations, and then it gives you a whole menu of options to choose from with legal backing in the U.S. Constitution. So much more aggressive intelligence sharing, targeting architecture, less political friction from the United States for military involvement. Easier coalition building as well, because now you're battling counterterrorism, and that's a very familiar legal and policy wrapper that a lot of allies can wrap their head around. But the cost is that you are now importing counter-terror rules of engagement logic into a space that is at its core a law enforcement problem. It's a government problem. It's an Ecuadorian problem. I'm not saying that we don't have the manpower to participate in this, and I'm not saying that there isn't a second and third order benefits. I'm just saying that I think our energies are probably best spent elsewhere at the moment, but Ecuador is becoming a battle space in the cocaine supply chain, so it's probably going to be exploited. The Associated Press describes Ecuador as a logistical hub for stockpiling and exporting drugs via ports to the United States and Europe. So I can see why this is a juicy target. Ecuador is not a supporting cast. It's increasingly the center of gravity for a lot of interdiction pressures. And Ecuadorians rejecting foreign basing, but still inviting operational involvement, it's kind of speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They're doing this in somewhat of a classified framework, and that contradiction is going to bite them in the ass, because this is a political time bomb. If operations go sideways and the backlash from that, it's going to be fast, and it's going to be nationalist. So you have embedded advisors, and once you have embedded advisors and shared targeting and mission planning support, then the only step up is direct action, or enabling Ecuador to do direct action at a tempo that effectively makes the U.S. A co-belligerent in perception. So it's basing by any other name. Just keep a lookout for this. It's a story that is developing. It is a story that is not necessarily new, because it does have some history tied to it, but the United States pivot towards the home hemisphere, it's no joke. It's not rhetoric. They're absolutely making it a real thing. I would not be surprised at all if Ecuador changes its tune here by the end of the year and does allow U.S. basing on their home turf. That would be my assessment. But we'll see. Yeah. There's more to the story on Ecuador, but I want to leave it there for the moment. I think that we have covered a lot of ground. So let's shift to, I don't know. I was going to talk a little bit about the U.S. embassy, or correction, the U.S. consulate in Karachi. I'll give it a brief attention here as I get to the bottom half of my dram. So as you know, in previous discussions, I've spent a bit of time in Pakistan, amongst its people, amongst its climate, amongst its culture. There are things going for it. There are things that I dislike. Regardless of my opinions on the country and climate and culture, this attack on the consulate in Karachi and Lahore is something that we have seen numerous times in this part of the world, not just in Pakistan, but in that part of the world. Probably 100% anti-United States, pro-Iran driven. You had the U.S. Marine Security Guard forces engage people, and reports on the number of casualties are varied. I think that the Associated Press and other wire services put the final tally at 22 dead and over 100 wounded. The Marine Security Guard's job is to prevent the embassy or consulate from being overrun. It is a pretty boring job until instances like this happen. The front page is going to splatter, Marines kill protesters, and then all the way down at the bottom in the small print is going to be after they climbed the walls and breached the perimeter. Appreciate the fact that a consulate is U.S. sovereign territory in the same way that an embassy in Washington, D.C. from Spain or Portugal or Germany or France or any nation that has an embassy is also sovereign space. The country as a whole has an obligation to defend it. So the Marine Security Guard's job is to defend that consulate until host nation support can mobilize. And it never came. And if it did, it came too late. And there's going to be a lot of blowback. There's going to be members of U.S. Congress ask the questions like, well, why were the defenses not farther out? Where were the barricades? Where were the concertina wire? Why did you feel the need to shoot? To which I would respond, go fuck yourself. You have never stood on that side of the wall. You entitled brat have done nothing but sit in an office on Capitol Hill while there's a 20-year-old Marine who graduated from his entry-level training course, went through the MSG school, and is deployed to a foreign country whose sole job most of the time is to buzz people in and out of the gate or the door or the consulate. And then out of nowhere, the United States decides to attack Iran. A bunch of Pakistani Shia Muslims get really pissed off, climb the wall. So you train this Marine to do a job, and then he did his job. And then, God, I'm starting to sound like a few good men. Just fucking thank him for the freedom in which he's providing. Don't question the way he's doing it. But there's going to be investigations. There's going to be blame. The left is going to blame Trump for attacking Iran in the first place, and he was the one that brought this whole thing to light. Most of the people on the right are going to understand that there is a certain segment of the world that, regardless of what we do, just hates Americans, just hates us, will always seek any opportunity to exploit that hatred by performing things like what is taking place in Pakistan and, Lahore. And I've been to the consulate in Karachi. I understand the layout. It is a difficult position that you are putting the Marine security guards in when you have hundreds of protesters throwing Molotov cocktails, throwing rocks, throwing bottles, storming the wall. And then you're asking them to make a split-second decision whether to pull that trigger or not. I'm not surprised. There's probably going to be more of this, especially as the campaign against Iran escalates. There's going to be more embassies in that part of the world and parts of the world where you wouldn't expect it as well, because they are a known fixed location. If you are in a foreign country and you want to attack Americans, there's one place that you're guaranteed to find them. You go to the embassy or you go to the consulate. So I would expect to see more of these. It implies that Pakistan just moved up the threat ladder. we'll see. Why do I say we will see? What I am saying we will see is, will these attacks increase? Will there be a follow-on? Once you do this once and you did it successfully, it is now a template for other anti-American groups to exploit. Because you just had a successful attack against a U.S. consulate. So let's try it again. This time we'll try it over here, or we'll try it over there. I mean, not that anybody in the opposition in that part of the world listens to anything that I have to say, but my advice to you would be, don't fucking do it. You have no idea the reach back that the United States has. What you see on the ground looking over those sites is not the only weapon. Except when Hillary Clinton was in charge, and then the people in Benghazi spent, almost a day on their own before they had any external support. But hey, what difference does it make now, right? Right, Hillary? Sorry, I kind of digressed there. So I would definitely want everyone to put this in the context in which it is deserved. The Marine Security Guard detachment did exactly what they were supposed to do against a group that was storming the consulate. If you want to shift the blame towards the administration, that's fine. You can say that it's America's fault that consulate got overrun, but you can't deny the inalienable right to self-defense. And yeah. And with that, I'll probably leave it. There's a bit more meat on this bone, but I think that's enough for one sitting. So I just want to say thank you for listening. I'll continue to provide what I hope is information, not bias, not spin. And when my opinion is waged, and it is waged from time to time, I'll make sure that it's called out. I'm at the end of my drink, and so that means we're at the end of my show. Until next time, I am Brad Colbert, the Iceman, encouraging all of you, as always, to stay frosty.
Improvise, adapt, and overcome.